Ever since the inception of the city builder, players love to expand and grow their cities to larger and larger sizes, sprawling across the maps with ever-increasing skyscrapers, metropolises, humongous cities, and using every single map tile at their disposal. But what would a city look like if it was the opposite of sprawling? If instead of using all the map available, you were limited to one single solitary tile? Not the entire starting area of a map, which is small, I grant you, but is actually 9 large, roomy, spacious tiles in size. But we're going to use just one single tile. A tile that is measured at a minuscule 75 units wide and 75 units tall. 1/9 of the starting area, and it's starting to look quite constrained, quite cramped, and so un-metropolis-like that I begin to wonder, is a one-tile city even possible? I'm going to be exploring this question in the most modern, the most realistic city builder, Cities Skylines 2. Can it be possible to create a thriving, growing, bustling, money-making city in only one tile? Will the people flock to drive on the tiny streets, happily toil in the tiny industries, and rush to spend their hard-earned moolah in the tiny shops?
Shut up and take my money!
Well, grab your cup of tea, and together, let's find out the answer. I started by choosing the map. Mountain Village looked good. I named our new city Compactburg as it seemed apt to the challenge at hand, and dived in. Flat land, access to a little water, lots of trees. I marked out my one tile, 75 by 75 units only, and gazed across what was soon to become my magnus opus. That's Swedish for amazing city. Wanting to make the absolute best use of the limited space available to me, I embarked upon a road layout unlike any that I had attempted before. Instead of the humble roundabout, we were gonna go grids, baby. Grids, grids, grids as far as the eye could see. We didn't have to keep the grids forever, and things could be adjusted along the way, of course, but something told me that this would be a good start. Sometime later, we have a beautiful, symmetrical, and visually pleasing, fully gridded tile. Now I'm sure, my discerning viewers, you've noticed that as it stands, no one can be moving into the city because there is no outside connection. But this is the tile that I chose. So with a quick swish of the road tool, a connection was made, and I made sure that the actual connection was inside the one constraining tile that we had, and got to work. This road design was chosen to maximize space. It used the thin but zonable alley road with 4 tiles in between so we could have back-to-back 2 wide and 2 long buildings. These citizens would be getting to know each other very well in these cramped spaces. But I get ahead of myself. We need water, sewage, and electricity, the very basics of a good city life. With the very limited access to water in our tile, I had to be careful. One wrong move and my citizens would not enjoy the taste of the water that I would be providing for them. So I made a decision to sacrifice a small amount of land in Compactburg for a sewage outlet, praying that it was far enough away from the water pumping services. Hang on a minute. A serendipitous discovery was made. Our meager one-tile sized city actually has access to groundwater, an innovation bestowed upon us by the colossal order developers after Cities Skylines 1, and I was going to take advantage of it, so my citizens could happily make their cups of Yorkshire tea. For electricity, we had no access to external power sources, they were out of bounds. Wind was a no-go as the land lieth low, so dirty coal was our only choice, and finding a suitable spot way over at the back downwind, I cringed as it took up almost 9 of my perfect squares. Our space that was already at a premium was evaporating before my eyes. With the initial services taken care of, we could now invite the discerning public to come on in and grab a plot. Zoning was carefully undertaken with one eye on the progress of our soon-to-be megalopolis. Oh yeah, of course, we needed sewage and not the water pumping services. My bad. And within mere moments, we were a tiny town. Now things were rolling with access to budgets, roads and bridges that we would never use, clinics, and above all, medium density housing. Oh yeah. We could now cram even more people into the space that Compactburg held so dear. At last, our first residents of Compactburg arrived, filled with hope and a love for small things, hopefully, which was good because this city was compact. They raced to find the best house money could buy and enjoy each other's company, which was going to be very close to them, and the lovely views. And grow we must. That demand bar became like that needy friend, always wanting more. We zoned, it grew, they moved in, we zoned, it grew, and the cycle continued. Along the way, we placed what would be conceivably the only clinic to ever grace this land, but only time would tell if that was true. Keeping up with the residential demand was easy, commercial, a cinch, but now industry was raising its ugly head. Satisfying the demands without taking up too much space would be a challenge, but one that I embraced. I zoned like a madman until we hit Small Village. Once again, the rewards of wealth, education, and medium density apartments had my bank manager and the happy citizens of our city jumping for joy. Now, education, the backbone of a growing civilization, was now the greatest tool at hand. An elementary school was carefully placed in the optimum position, which was, of course, inside our one tile because outside would just be plain wrong. We would also need a high school to keep the conveyor belt of knowledge flowing, so I placed that too and lost even more valuable real estate. And then kept right on zoning. Our city was approaching 350 citizens, but alas, death was at the door. Hearses were called for, and even though we could allow these services to be serviced from outside the city, I thought it best to spend some points and build our own crematorium. With our recently unlocked medium density housing, we could build up higher into the sky and house even more people per teeny tiny square of land. Rents would be cheaper, we could encourage more people to move in and study. Population would expand. In the middle of all this, there was a game update, the last update before Colossal Order went on a break. Let's hope this patch doesn't break the game. And I'm also hoping it fixes the potato trees that you might have spotted from time to time earlier on in the video. Anywho, back to the challenge. Medium density flats or apartments, if you're from across the pond, were springing up, and soon they were filled to the brim. Zoning was becoming my life, but I took a quick break to adjust my taxes. People were happy and getting happier. Nice. But zoning was becoming my life. Every plot must be the efficient 2x2. Every house 2x2. Every shop 2x2. Every industry, you guessed it, 2x2. And of course, every service building as large as it needs to be. I was caught by surprise as we hit Large Village with a nice cash boost, some development points, and some useless tiles that we couldn't unlock because this was the one tile challenge, not the many tile challenge. Also, we now have access to service budgets, which would mean more money for us, plus fire, farming, and police to keep the people safe and fed. Zoning continued. Our tile was becoming more and more cramped. I decided to adjust some of the services to claw back some funds, and then noticed we had gone too far. We had become engaged in incorrect zoning placement. Complaints were rearing their ugly head. Ground pollution, air pollution. What have we done? Even though I personally thought they were both at acceptable levels, there was only one solution. That's right, kicking them out of our city. The offending people were caught by surprise, as their couches magically disappeared from beneath them. They would take it on the chin, though, like the true compact Bergians they were. Once again, complaints were appearing. High rent was the cry. Possibly because crime was high and the police were nowhere to be seen. That was easily solved, and they went out on patrol like the troopers they are. It was then that I realised that I'd forgotten the specialised industries with chickens and stone at our fingertips, so I got right on that after some effort. Stone being used in the upkeep of houses and chickens, of course, being used for food should help to keep local costs down. These would both be deleted later for the space. What seemed like hours passed, and then I zoned no more. I'd reached the point where our one teeny tiny tile was full. Everything was zoned. Everything was full. No room was left. Our population was still growing. Almost 1,000 people loved living in Compactburg. But was this the end? Could we expand no more? Never! We would now look to enact some gentrification, a process that could, if done right, bring in the more affluent, more well-to-do citizen that would pay more rent, educate themselves more, and take higher paying jobs and spend more money, growing our economy larger and larger, growing the city ever more larger. I digress. So what could we spend our 5 development points on that would help us with these new goals? Roundabouts? Well, as lovely as they are, we had no need. The same with road services or parking. Electricity and water were already taken care of, as well as health and trash, which we just threw over the board of our one tile into the next tile. But college, welfare offices and universities, if we could make room for them, they could be our ticket to the megalopolopolis that we sought. But we had reached a standoff. No more citizens could move in because there was no more space to zone, and we had no demand for higher density residential. What we needed was space for students. As large as it was, the college had to go in somewhere. I bit the bullet. Which took us to Grand Village, with more money, development points and useless extra tiles. But the production panel access could prove lucrative, as well as the low rent housing and parks, of course. Who doesn't love a dog park? So, low rent housing went in, which took up the very small high residential demand that we had, plus some dog parks to keep people and all the dogs happy. Also, offices were now in demand. Other goods could be made, software could be sold, and more educated people could find suitable employment. Looking at the production panel, it was obvious that coal was in very high demand, so what natural resources did we have in our one tile? Nothing. Just farmland, and we'd already built over that. People were still mildly annoyed, and the tax rate seemed to be the problem, so with all the government subsidies coming in, why not drop the tax for residential? And with no more space to build, raise the tax for everybody else. In fact, I wanted to encourage well and highly educated people, so I would pay them to come into Compactburg and live with us. So I kept my eye on the well and highly educated figures, and nobody moved in until we finally passed 1,000 citizens. And then a few moments later, disaster struck. Buildings afire, collapsing, carnage. Apparently we had no local fire services, so they travelled from outside, and by the time they arrived, it was too late. So we quickly fixed that problem and hoped nobody had noticed. Day became night, became day again, and then it happened. We had 0.1% of a well-educated person, and the demands for medium and high density started to climb. So we zoned. I decided to start removing industry as it was causing pollution, and I think we could easily get by with less. Hopefully killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Lower pollution, growing the population. We also upgraded our schools with libraries that would increase the chance of graduation, which would in turn need more higher density zoning. Plans were afoot. For a while, it was a game of whack-a-mole, trying to fulfill different demands to induce other different demands, but my city seemed to be stuck around the 1,200 citizen mark. So I lowered tax rates again, hoping industry could level up, want to employ more people and increase demand again, and it worked. Tiny town, yeah. Now we have access to postal services and internet. Nice. And our first mixed zoning. Lovely. Demand was starting to skyrocket, so I replaced and rebuilt. Higher and higher, denser and denser. The city was growing in front of our eyes, smaller houses replaced by towering blocks housing more and more compact Bergians. Then we unlocked the Polaris suites with a well-being bonus and 180 households capacity. I made room for it immediately and hoped and prayed that people would move in. And as much as I loved our quarry, it caused far too much ground pollution and took up space, so it had to go. I soon realised that no one had a place to park their car in a city, so I did what all good mayors do, put up a parking lot on the outskirts of town. By now, I was growing desperate. Taxes would all now be at 0 and service charges were dropped as well. I wanted more and more people to save more and move and upgrade and move in and live in my lovely tiny little town. Maybe transportation was the key? Will buses be our only hope? I made room. Lines clockwise and counterclockwise and one across town would hopefully be enough to satiate our citizens' desire for travel. Unfortunately, ground pollution was still holding back Polaris Suites from filling its 180 slots, so it had to move. Rubicon Apartments became available, again well-being bonuses galore and more people slots. Very quickly it began to fill, population was rising once again, and things were looking up. Then we finally hit Boomtown, and pollution management was on the cards for sure. Our city will be green if it's the last thing I do. It was not the last thing I did, and we never ended up green. After many hours of micromanaging our demands, we had finally hit Busy Town, and people were moving in. At one point, I did try university, but it took up a third of the tile, and it didn't help. My goal was Big Town, which would bring high-density residential, and then Great Town for the high-density businesses. Jobs were key. We needed enough open positions to tempt people to move in and stay in Compactburg. A good strategy was to fulfill the medium density and commercial demands by replacing low-density commercial with mixed use, which of course contains commercial and counts as medium-density residential. Two birds, one stone. But chaos was setting in. At one point, a multi-car collision threatened to take out nearby buildings with a raging inferno. But the proud firefighters did their duty, and our mixed-use buildings were saved. Population was slowly and surely creeping ever closer to 3,000 citizens, but with no room to build XP gaining items, our only increase in XP came from population growth. We finally hit 3,000 population and progressed slowly but surely closer to Big Town. Then it happened. As we entered 2025, we hit Big Town. Now we would grow. The sky was the limit. High density was now at my fingertips. But again, lack of jobs was the problem. If we were going to get the demand we needed, we must have more jobs. So again, I dropped the tax rate to 0 to promote leveling up and more jobs. I then went mad. Any house or business complaining about no customers or no money would be banished and replaced with high-density residential, and they would love it. And it finally happened. High-density buildings. Albeit they were empty, but build it and they would come, wouldn't they? Yes, they would! Thank you, Rebecca Porter. Then our first death wave hit. Hearses were called, but the numbers kept rising. I thought this was something we'd left behind in Cities Skylines 1. How would this nightmare end? We lost hundreds at the end of 2028. They just couldn't keep up. Upgrading the crematorium to deal with the demand with additional incinerators and freezer expansion pushed us morbidly XP step by XP step towards our next target of Great Town. Slowly but surely, that teeny tiny green bar of high-density residential demand that was taunting me from the taskbar would creep ever up. We were growing again. I started upgrading buildings, gaining more and more XP, craving the next milestone, and then one breezy day in May. Great Town! We were a great town with commercial high density, yes! I built, I replaced, I bulldozed. I wanted high rises as far as the eye could see. It was finally happening. Medium density would be replaced over and over and over with large, sleek, tall, beautiful skyscrapers. Swathes of commercial were built higher and higher. Then 4,000 population. So many people wanted to move in. We now had traffic jams at our extremely inadequate, would look good if it had a roundabout city entrance. It was glorious. Population exploded and we breezed past 5k. There seemed no limit. 5,500, there it is in our rearview mirror. 6,000. Autumn turned to winter, turned to 2029, and in the month of February, we hit Small City. Our success was assured as we now had access to high-density offices and city promotion. Who wouldn't want to live here in Compactburg? So we zoned and waited. Adjusted our exorbitant office tax rate down, and bingo, we started getting more jobs, and we know that that will attract more people. So that's what happens if you build a city in the smallest of tiles in Cities Skylines 2. With enough time and patience, you could reach Megalopolopolis, I'm sure. But we shall take comfort from our small city in just one tiny tile, 75 by 75, remembering that each of its residents is one happy compact Bergian. My name's Biffa, and if you've enjoyed this video, a sub and a like would be most appreciated. Thank you to all of my lovely Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members too, who I'm sure would all love to live in my one tile city. I'll see you soon for the next one. Have a great day. Bye bye.